For anyone that doesn't know, my name is Nicola Talkington. I worked alongside Peter Potasco as part of the Unlimited Sea Change team, of which quite a few of the people who've come here today were part of, and we've also got a number of other people who are joining this conversation as well from different universities around the country. And I've seen Will is on the call as well, which is great. So Will was part of the dream team back in the day when we ran Sea Change. Just quickly from me, and then Peter will add a little bit as well on why we've convened this. So Peter and I have worked together beyond Unlimited for some time now, and we've bated breath, been watching what the universities do off and on over the years. We've put a lot of blood, sweat and tears into running that and designing that Sea Change programme, co-producing it with all of the partners involved. And we really feel as though the universities are great allies in social enterprise support place, as we'll come back to refresh shortly. And we're keen to see it continue in whatever way, shape or form, or keen to rekindle and reconnect, perhaps where there's a need for that. And we also think we've got some of the skills and expertise to support the universities, and we'll explain a bit more about that. And from my point of view, since running and supporting the development of that period of work, the Sea Change programme and the higher education support programme and all these things, I've set up my own social enterprise support consultancy. It's a pay it forward consultancy called Flourish together. We've got a mixture of clients ranging from Greater Manchester Combined Authority and infrastructure organisations through to housing associations, a handful of universities. I've not focused heaps on universities, but I've always been there to support. And we do a lot of work with the social enterprises directly. Because it's a pay it forward consultancy, we reinvest our profits in supporting women as a force for social change. And through that, we're able to support lots of women, social innovators, social leaders, and entrepreneurs. We've supported over 750 women change makers in the last 4 or 5 years. And in the pandemic alone, we've helped 100 social enterprises to start to flourish in the Northwest. So there's a lot going on there. Certainly a lot of the expertise that I've got over the last 20 years of working in the voluntary community sector has been really thrown into Flourish. We've won all sorts of awards I won't bore you with, but we love what we're doing. We've really flourished through the pandemic, and supporting, my co-directors and the board of our organisation are still keen to work with universities as and where there's an appetite and good partnerships there. So that's my side of things. Peter, do you want to say a bit about what you've been up to?
Very happy to, Nicola. Again, a big welcome, a big warm welcome. It feels wonderful to have this many universities back in at least a virtual room. I think we'd all love to be hosting this event in person again, but it is great to have everybody here. A special shout out, of course, to Will, who was a big part of the success of Sea Change over what was effectively a decade of work. I was delighted to be involved in this work back at Unlimited, and I'm so thrilled to see that it has continued and that your universities are already doing this work in many different ways. Of course, there have been a lot of diverse programs delivered since the Sea Change program formally ended about 5 years ago. We felt that it would be a good time to have another conversation around actually what's happening in the sector now. It's a really tough time, I know that, for all of us, but especially for universities. What were the impacts on international students, as well as, of course, the lockdowns, the fact that universities are being asked to do a lot of things that they wouldn't normally have to do, such as setting up testing centres, all at the same time as not having the direction from government I know we would all like to see. So it is a really tough time. Nicola and I came together to have a conversation around what value could we bring, both from our experience, but also the organisations we work with right now. So Nicola's shared a bit more about Flourish and the really important work it's been doing over this past year and before. I launched Cambio 3 years ago, and we focus on 3 things really. So coaching entrepreneurs directly. So I have a cohort of social entrepreneurs I work with one-to-one from startup to scale up. That's what really drives me and what brought me into the sector 15 years ago. Second piece is partnerships, and I've been lucky enough to work with many of you since Sea Change ended, helping you to develop stronger programs of support for social entrepreneurs all over the UK, and innovative ways to do more with less, I suppose, over that same period. And the third piece is I've been lucky enough to work internationally as well. So work with a range of businesses and universities all over the world, where we can effectively share best practice. So Nicola and I got together. We felt that we could bring a range of expertise and ideas, and that we'd have this host session, this first session, to hear a bit more about what you've been doing, and perhaps bring some value to that along the way.
Fantastic. So really what we're...
So in terms of the purpose of...
Go for it, Peter, go.
Oh, sorry, Nicola. So in terms of the purpose of the session today, it's really 3 or 4 things, I suppose. First of all, to reconnect a group of universities that are doing exciting work in and around social entrepreneurship and social innovation. We felt actually there was real value in just bringing all of you into one space to hear those stories. But secondarily, to get a sense of what are your needs and what are your priorities, and what is it that we could offer you that would be of value. So there is, as part of that, a sort of menu of support that could be of value, but also capacity building. So a lot of what Sea Change delivered was obviously partly built around the peer network, but also around the range of additional support that the team were able to go into universities and offer. And we think some of that still could be of value, so we wanted to explore that today. So that's the broad purpose. We're doing a bit of talking at the start, and then we'll be handing over to you to do most of the talking in the session itself.
Fantastic. And there's lots of things that we currently do, and we'll come back to this, but believe it or not, this was the list of things that was put in. There was a presentation that I did a good couple of years ago now, when HEFGE commissioned Flourish, my organisation, to do the review on higher education institutions and what they do to support social entrepreneurship, innovation and leadership, and really drawing from not only the Sea Change programmes that we've been running, but the kind of the bigger picture as well. And so Peter and I reflected on that and have added to this other things that both of our organisations do. We do lots of other things as well, but these are some of the things that we could certainly think about offering as part of follow-up work or follow-up support. But what I was going to move on to was to have quick recap, really. It feels like a long time ago. I can't wait to hear where you're all at and what's been going on for you. But we thought to set the scene for where a lot of the developments occurred. We were just going to recap some of the learning from this headline findings report, where we were looking at the capacity of universities to support social entrepreneurs, innovators and leaders. So I'm not going to whiz through, don't panic, it's not going to take forever. There's just some whistle-stop slides to set the tone, because I know some universities here were perhaps part of some or all of this, and some that are coming might not have been part of any of it. So it's just to recap. Way back 2009, and even prior to that, actually, planning and development for the higher education social entrepreneurship programme, which was then followed by the support programme, really started Unlimited and HEFGE's relationship in looking at how could they unlock more potential in the higher education sector in supporting social entrepreneurs more effectively. And there was, as you'll know, there was this combination of initially Unlimited just looking at different universities, about 100 involved in applying for grants, and people sent their staff, students and graduates to Unlimited, and they were funded to do projects, campaigns, set up social ventures. And then what this moved into was a period of capacity building where rather than Unlimited do this, we supported universities to find, fund and support social entrepreneurs. Over 90 were involved at the time, but the ones who were specifically involved too, the programme was about 86 universities, and it was a substantial programme or series of programmes in the respect that, over the course of these programmes, £5 million was invested from HEFGE, £3 million was match funded by the universities themselves through both cash and support, and it was just a great collaborative partnership to be able to allocate resources effectively, and over 2,000 people, 2,000 social entrepreneurs were supported through the main programme period. That then led into so when I say that programme period, I'm meaning up from 2009 to about 2015. As the programmes were coming to an end, and the Sea Change programme shifted things again in the respect that not only were people and universities finding funding and supporting social entrepreneurs, we really moved into different kinds of territory, like building clusters and partnerships and innovation partnerships and helping create a kind of social enterprise kind of graduate internship training programs. And there was all sorts of things that were trialed and tested at that point, but things, as they invariably do, started to wind to a close. It was around that time, around 2015, that Peter and I started to develop this consultancy program. We didn't want to just let things fall off a cliff. And fortunately, our bosses at the time in Unlimited said, you know, put out prospectus, see who wants some additional support. And that's what we did. And so 25 universities at that time bought into this, what was in effect a progression program. It totaled about 100k, where different universities bought in at different levels, and we were able to continue some intensive support. More importantly, we were able to continue that peer support network, try and keep strategic buy-in and momentum rolling, and really highlight and showcase and have important conversations, you know, around strategic and thematic areas, which is something we're still very interested in. Beyond that, you know, who knows? It's whatever people are wanting to think about, but we're certainly keen to open that conversation and see where it might take us. And I'm just going to touch on this in-depth kind of review that was done around 2017. As I say, Ed Hughes at Hefke at that time is still linked within those organisations that evolved, and we're still in contact with him. He commissioned this review, rightly so, from such an in-depth piece of work, around 24 universities, 19 social entrepreneurs that had been funded across the country, and 15 different stakeholder agencies got involved in this. So it wasn't a huge review, but it was substantial enough to give some meaningful information. And some of the headlines on some of this stuff, I'm just going to come back to. So this slide really touches on the significance of the programme and the significance of the investment. So in addition to that kind of 8 million that was found across Hefke and, you know, 86 plus universities to work on this, even 1 year on, this slide reflects 1 year on, you know, 2.2 million was still being invested in support across the 19 universities that reported back on that, and 1.1 million was being invested as physical cash awards across those universities that fed back. Just again reflecting on the significance of what played out across the 5-year period of the Sea Change programmes. 24 universities who took part in a particular survey at that point identified 738 social enterprises that incorporated during that period, and you know, some were supporting, you know, less than 20 a year, some were supporting significantly more. But this slide's just to show the legacy that was built at that point. Whether or not that's still evolving, we're keen to hear, but that just sets the scene for that side of things. The next couple of slides are just showing, you know, it was all about what we wanted to look at as well was how universities are a real ally in the social enterprise and business support space. And that was really clear to us in terms of what the universities were offering across the spectrum of different things that they were all doing, what their future needs, you know, was something that we looked at the time. So I kind of left that in there in case, you know, what played out. Did some of these things come to pass, and are any of these things still relevant and current now? What we found from speaking to both students and staff who'd been funded at universities, but also the wider world, you know, your infrastructure agencies, other consultants that work in social enterprise support, and different organisations, where a lot of them really valued what you were doing and found this is a really good way to build different kinds of partnerships. So as it says there, 79% of the people who were funded and supported through the universities, you know, recommended this and really valued it. In terms of wider stakeholders, you know, they saw how universities could play, you know, a complementary role, could be delivering some of the similar stuff that they do, be aligning and joining resources. So there was a lot, you know, I won't read through all this, but there were lots of different ways in which, and undoubtedly some of you are still providing a lot of these types of things. And we were looking at how different agencies, both you know, internal colleagues and external colleagues, were valuing what you were doing and how it was working. This is just looking, you know, I'm curious to know what the language is. We won't get into this today, but you know, the language always evolves, and the language always shifts. And you know, are we supporting social enterprise? Are we supporting social innovation? Are we supporting social leaders? Was always something that we kind of grappled with. And then it evolved when we started this cluster work and other thematic partnerships on, you know, what it takes to make a socially responsible university. And, you know, whether it's talking about anchor institutions or whether it's using this sort of language still, we were able to ask both the social entrepreneurs, the universities themselves and the wider stakeholders what they've, and this, bear in mind, this was back in 2017, but these were the things, the kind of top priorities, if you will, the top things that they saw as the elements that make a university a socially responsible university. So I just flag that back up. What have we got next? In summary, there's a couple of summary slides here. You know, in summary, and you know, some of you read this report, no doubt, cover to cover, midnight, I'm sure. No, don't think. But you know, in summary, we had, you know, various enablers, you know, things that enabled this kind of work and to flourish and build legacy in universities. We had all manner of barriers. You know, are they still barriers? Are there new barriers? And there were all sorts of opportunities. You know, this new kind of way of working, all of these different kinds of potential that evolved as a result of thinking about entrepreneurship differently, unlocking new kinds of talent, working in different kinds of collaborative partnerships, finding resources from different places, and also linking in some of the, you know, the key, you know, pillars of what universities are all about in terms of, you know, research and learning and, you know, building, you know, students of the future and active citizens of the future. We're all tapped into, you know, what this was about, as well as, you know, procurement principles and how to, you know, buy ethically and buy social and all of that. And there were, you know, a bunch of, you know, key sort of assets that are listed there that we're going to reflect on in a minute, you know, in terms of what the key assets were for universities, what strengths seem to work and make these programs work well. We're going to get into a little poll in a second just on some of this stuff, just to get a litmus test on people's thoughts and where things are at currently. But final slide from me here. I'm sorry it's so fast, but I want to make sure we get into talking and hearing from you. These were the recommendations that were sort of summarised as, you know, 5 key recommendations and a list of actions. There's no point giving, you know, recommendations without some suggested actions. And this is what was given at the time. There were certain things that, you know, progressed and moved forward. I think one of the reasons Peter and I are sort of back here now is because as we've had conversations with people over the years, there's a lot of this that hasn't been able to come to play for whatever reason. And we still believe, you know, rightly or wrongly, that some of this is still valuable stuff. Some of this is still necessary. But we're keen to hear from you in terms of progress that's been made, challenges that are still there, other things somewhat beyond people's control around the whole kind of culture sector, not least the pandemic. So we kind of set that out as a bit of a stall and a bit of a whistle-stop recap. I will put the link to the full report in the chat for anybody who wanted to get their hands on that as a reminder, or as anybody who's never seen it. We'll put that there so people can look at it. But that is our whistle-stop tour. What I was going to do is I'm going to attempt to share a poll. I'm still a bit of a novice on polls, I have to say. You academics and you university people will be no doubt much more savvy on this on me, but we've basically a little mini poll here. I hope it's going to make sense and it's not asking anything too probing, and it's just picking, there's 4 questions that are picking back up on some of what we've discussed. And so I'm going to launch my poll. Hope that this works and that you can see it. It says it's in progress, and it's basically, we're keen to know, you know, is your university still running support for social entrepreneurs? And it might be a, you know, yes, no, don't know, but there's, you know, there's some categories there. You know, we can appreciate some universities have evolved to the point where they don't differentiate the 2 types of entrepreneur, but we're just keen to see. Feel free to post your answers if you're happy to take part in this poll. So there's that question. We're then going back to that thing around assets. So at the time, you know, highlighted in the report, there were various assets that, you know, were valued in supporting social entrepreneurs. You know, having knowledgeable staff, you know, having solid external partnerships, having strategic buy-in, trusted peer networks, having cash awards and investment, social incubation, social enterprise incubation and accelerators were evolving then, and ethical procurement were some of the things. So feel free to place your votes there, where any of that's still an asset and or a priority for your institution. There's another one here. I can see some of you are getting down there, so that's great. We're keen to hear, is any of this still relevant for you, or are any of these areas that you might need particular support with or find useful, through, anything we're discussing today or anything else? Where are there areas that you or your organisation still need support with? And put your hand up, Darren, that's fine. Come off mute if people would rather say. And then we're just curious to see what people have linked to in terms of the networks that do exist. Has anybody engaged with any of the stuff that's there? So Darren, fire away.
Okay, cool. The absence of unlimited has been really obvious. And I say for us from both a Hallam perspective and the University of Sheffield, because I've worked at both throughout since 2012 with you guys. And as soon as kind of unlimited went, our access to peer networks and being able to meet with other unis directly, and I must admit from a selfish perspective, being able to travel and engage in a completely different location meant a lot more. Like, we could do a lot more with it. And you came away from those events a bit more invigorated. You wanted to do some stuff. Since then, in terms of an update, like the University of Sheffield, when I was there, we did engage in a lot of ambitious social enterprise things, because we had the confidence from Sea Change to go on and do something. So we were responsible for a South Korean social enterprise accelerator with the only MBA globally in social enterprise, and that was an absolute mammoth of a task, but we did that for 3 years back to back. And I don't think that would have happened if we had not have engaged in connecting communities and also social launchpad with you guys. So now, with an entirely different hat on at Hallam, I would really be excited about the prospect of this kind of group coming together again. Access to project finance is a big one. I'm not going to lie, had there not been a big cash hook attached to what we were doing before, I don't think the institution would have engaged as much. So that is quite a big thing. But that said, on the ground for individuals like myself, it makes a difference to be able to speak with other practitioners about what we're doing, the challenges we're actually facing, and and getting on with creating like some decent added value programs rather than for the sake of it. I've engaged with you, Nicola, and Peter ever since. And there's no cash attached to that. It's because we've built long-term collaborative partnerships. So I'd hope to do that with more HEIs with a social enterprise lens and focus. That's just been missing for years now. So yeah, I'd be really.
Thank you for being honest there, Darren, and for giving that perspective. And I know you've got to dash off, and it's the way you kind of jumped in, and I appreciate you making the time to say that. I think we've missed you too. Fucking being so gushing, and we've all been very busy doing lots of other things. And what you haven't touched on there, Darren, is just the role of people like yourself and others in different parts of the country have played in building their social enterprise places. I know you've been involved in the social enterprise network that's evolved in Sheffield and various other universities, like in Salford and in Plymouth and other parts of the country, have been key in building, the social enterprise support spaces around their areas. So that's something else that's a given way that we can sort of think about supporting people on this stuff. So thank you. I'm leaving the poll up for another few minutes in case anybody arrived a little bit late and they're just thinking, oh God, what have I missed? We've done a Whistlestop tour of just looking at some of the headline findings from that review and hefty report, and we've touched on the fact that today we're really looking at what we could be doing around reconnecting a peer support group, thinking about what priority needs are and opportunities are currently, which is why the poll's up. We have done, and we will revisit this menu of support and these options capacity building that we've started to think about, and explore what else and what's priority for you. So I'm going to leave that poll up there just for a minute for people. I'm going to move the slide on, Peter, if I'm allowed. Will it let me? Oh no, let me just try again. Here we go. We've just had our breakouts there. Obviously, we've been chatting through challenges and constraints, which I wonder if Peter and I might just, compare and contrast for time. And then we've got some considerations around what might make most sense now, and what we could do, and some potential offers and opportunities that Peter and I can put out there based on what. So do you want to share quickly your hit list of challenges that may have cropped up?
Yeah, very happy to, Nicola. So I'll summarise for our breakout room. Partnerships, really, I think, was probably the number one takeaway on both sides of the coin, in terms of it being a challenge to work with other institutions at a time like this, but also getting outside of one particular region into other regions. So partnerships and collaborations was a key part of that. Sustainability as a really important agenda at a number of these institutions right now, over and above simply social enterprise, social innovation. Mm-hmm. We've also, I think, previously mentioned this idea of social enterprise being seen as a core part of enterprise per se, and actually is that perhaps the new agenda, that all enterprises should have a social focus, and that's sort of the bottom line on that. The ability to partner with organisations outside of higher education is still a key one. I think international came up a couple of times, and managing a range of COVID-19 kind of programs alongside the sort of day-to-day work has been really challenging. And I think a couple of institutions referenced the fact that spending all day online in the kind of current societal situation is just very draining for colleagues across universities, and so it's just very difficult to cut through the day-to-day again. But certainly partnerships in terms of support was the number one, but also having kind of external figures with expertise being able to offer challenge and offer kind of external champions, I suppose, might be an important role too.
Sure. We picked up on the procurement conversation in saying that actually it may well be procurement managers and other people who've got more to say on that. Whilst it might not be a priority in this group, with the Social Value Act and other things, procurement and ethical buying is still something to look at, certainly with the buying power of universities and everywhere else. Money came up, obviously, in terms of, a need for money to resource people, where staff teams are small, and money to certainly the cash awards that were offered through the programs that have been run, and different awards to initiate activities to happen for entrepreneurs to take their ideas forward was a big thing that people are really up for trying to find. Some universities do and don't have Santander, something we talked about a little bit, Santander resources, but yes, people being stretched. And managing and juggling COVID and hybrid learning and everything else over the coming year. But we did get to the point where we talked through some potential next steps and some potential options, and because time was short, we didn't get a chance to really flesh it all out. But I certainly sowed this couple of seeds around the concept of trying to create a peer support network which would give us the time to co-design something, and I reiterated the fact that in addition to a peer support network, connecting people, to learn, to showcase, to lobby, and to co-design something of meaning, there's nothing really stopping us visiting a number of contacts that we already have nationally across different areas to look at a joint programme and actually Flourish, or whoever, if there's a university wanted to live in this, fine, but usually certain funders that we'd be thinking of going to for this, there's a way to write a bid and to put it out there. And I think what I did say is, if there's anybody, if there's a people who are going to do it, it's the people around this table who've got the skills and the networks and the reach to do that. I did remind people that within the Sea Change programme, on average, universities, when we looked at that cash award plus support plus wider peer support, bigger programme, universities' cash award pots typically were in the region of about 15 to 30k, ranging up to 50k for those larger institutions that had more match money to bring to the table. But even if we were with 10 universities as a start, with a cash awards pot and some support package and match wider resources, it feels a manageable thing to do personally. Whether it's a reality is another matter, but certainly going for $250,000 or $500,000 to look at something like that, even without having to go begging to to other funders as match partners right now, when they're all challenged with their own COVID priorities, it feels we've got options. Let's put it that way. So speaking of options, Peter, shall I flag up the last couple of slides and?
Yes, Nicola. I was going to say, obviously, we are running a little late now. I know we promised everybody we'd be finished at 1:30 p.m. But we had, prior to the session, come up with several ideas and options around how we could take this forward. And I think based on the sort of conversations we've had, Nicola's going to share the next slide, which talks a bit about what those potential offers might be. Based on the conversations that we've heard today, I think there's real appetite for a kind of renewal of a peer support network. And having universities join that from across the UK and potentially internationally as well. So I think as a starting point, what we'd envisaged is that we would relaunch a university peer support network in April, and that we'd share an Eventbrite for signups after this session. So that will give everybody a little bit of time to do some thinking about the shape of that, the scale of that, and some of the key topics we want to share, and that there might in the future be some value for targeted consultancy, as we mentioned in our group, kind of external champions, possibly even a cohort-based training program, depending on the way that network move forward. Obviously, we recognise that it's a really difficult time and that finding money for anything is just going to be hugely challenging. But we do think that we're creating significant value in launching a network like this, and we felt that was perhaps the jewel in the crown of the sea change years, I suppose, being able to make universities together, obviously initially in an online forum, and hopefully as we come out of this in an in-person forum in the future. So from my point of view, we would be keen to get out there a sort of Eventbrite with details on a date in mid-April, and an offer which we could share with you. Nicola, did you want to build on that?
I think you summed it up there. I think in terms of the peer support network side of things, when we looked at this before and 25 universities bought into a small program, they were buying into a quarterly peer learning event and a kind of showcasing strategic and lobbying conference that we co-designed together, that really brought in different agencies, different themes that were hot topics and priorities, and a mixture of strategic stuff and practical stuff. So those were the sorts of lines that we were thinking of in terms of, that sort of, putting a, £500 to £750 price tag on what do we need in order to cover a number of days of our time to coordinate getting us together 4 times a year and running a conference, so that we can think and co-design and create the kind of bid. And we would hope that within the first couple of meetings, there's some sort of bid being written to try and secure resources for the next academic year. That's what we'll be looking at. Trainer supporter stuff, we've just put that up there because we know there are some universities that are trying to capacity build their staff teams right now, and we've got a digital program that we can deliver that we're running for certain universities and other housing associations and other partners now. So we thought we'd put that there in case there's a need in certain institutions, and as Peter has said, where people need ad hoc or particular things, co-designing and putting together some bespoke packages, we can do that. But the priority for us, as Peter said, is seeing who we can galvanise, who's come today, and probably another 10 or 15 universities who haven't come, who've said, oh, tell me more. And we'll see if we can get a collective of 10 to 20 universities that are interested in developing something further over the year. So we'd happily take any questions, happily take any feedback or comments as well on this, and let people get on their merry way and cogitate on this. We'll send over the Listen Again link in case you want to share it with other colleagues in your institution or in others. We'll obviously have some other further information. There'll be a link to come to an event. We're looking at the week beginning the 19th of April or the week after, well after Easter and Easter holidays.